Welcome to this special edition of ENSCO INSIGHTS, the program where we delve deep into the cutting-edge technologies by interviewing the brilliant minds driving space exploration. Hi, I'm your host, Brooke Brown. 2024 was a year marked by significant strides in space technology and research. Private companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin continued to push the boundaries of spaceflight. Meanwhile, NASA's Artemis program took steps toward returning humans to the moon, continuing to move forward with the Artemis II mission. Additionally, international collaborations, such as the Artemis Accords, gain momentum, fostering cooperation among nations to explore the cosmos. So, which of these space stories were you, the readers and followers of the Space Intel Report, most interested in 2024? Here are the Space Intel Report's top 5 most read space topics for 2024. Number 5 is all about Artemis, the rocket, mission, and accord agreements. While the Artemis II mission has now been delayed, possibly until 2026, it still keeps making news with continuing stories about the heat shield investigation and preparations for the Artemis III mission, which aims to land the first woman and the next man on the moon's south pole. A mission NASA says is crucial for establishing sustainable human presence on the moon and serves as a stepping stone for future Mars exploration. Despite all these setbacks, about 50 countries have signed Artemis Accords that establishes a set of principles and guidelines for the international cooperation in the peaceful and responsible exploration of the Moon, Mars, and other celestial bodies. Moving on, the number 4 most read topic of 2024 was all about space debris, and rightly so. The most read stories included Airbus predicting low Earth debris could shut down most of Earth observation, NASA reporting debris from fragmented satellites accounts for 37% of trackable space objects, and the European Space Agency efforts to work toward a net neutral space debris policy by 2030. Next up, the number 3 most read stories involved NASA's Europa Clipper mission. The spacecraft launched in October on a Falcon 9 Heavy from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Europa Clipper is the first mission designed to conduct a detailed study of Jupiter's moon, Europa. There's scientific evidence that the ingredients for life may currently exist on Europa. The spacecraft will travel 1.8 billion miles, or 2.9 billion kilometers, to reach Jupiter in April 2030. Coming in at number 2 is the Chinese space program. The program achieved several significant milestones in 2024, including debuting the new Long March 12 rocket that is capable of lifting 10 tons to low Earth orbit. This was just one of the 100 orbital rocket launches the Chinese sent up, a new national record for their country. China also brought lunar samples back to Earth. Chang'e 6 successfully brought back samples from the moon. Finally, the Tiangong space station had 2 crewed and 2 cargo missions in 2024. These milestones highlight China's ambitious and rapidly advancing space program. But our number 1 most read about space topic in 2024 is SpaceX's Starship. In 2024, SpaceX's Starship program achieved several significant milestones, including 4 test flights of the large Starship rocket, demonstrating its capabilities and reliability. And of course, no one will forget the first booster catch when SpaceX, for the first time, successfully caught the Super Heavy booster with the launch tower's chopstick arms that are often called Mechazilla. This achievement marked a major step towards full reusability of the rocket. And all these accomplishments highlight SpaceX's progress in developing Starship as a fully reusable launch vehicle for missions to the Moon, Mars, and beyond. And those are the top space stories of 2024. I should also mention that Jared Isaacman got considerable attention in 2024 for his Polaris Dawn mission, the groundbreaking private space flight where he made the first commercial spacewalk. That mission set new records for human travel distance from Earth. Isaacman continues to make news now as the nominee for the new NASA administrator. We are going to take a short break, but we will be right back with our panel of space experts to give us their insights on what will be the top space news stories for the next year. So don't go away.
Long before liftoff and beyond, one team has set our trajectory for assured access to space.
Engines throttling up.
By taking ideas
Go and throttle up.
to reality. We are ENSCO, Aerospace Engineering.
Welcome back to the special edition of ENSCO Insights as we review the top space stories of 2024 and explore the top stories you will be reading on the Space Intel Report in 2025. Joining us now, we have a panel of space experts to give us some insights on what will be the big space news stories in 2025. Meagan Crawford, the founder and managing partner of SpaceFund. With a passion for space entrepreneurship, Meagan co-founded the world's longest running space business plan competition and has guided numerous space startups through their early stages. She is also a leading advocate for women in space and hosts the Mission Eve podcast. Scott Chase, past chairman and chairman emeritus of the Satellite Show, the world's largest gathering of the global satellite-enabled marketplace. With decades of experience in the satellite and space industry, Scott is a former associate editor of the Satellite News and the former publisher of Via Satellite magazine. Early on, Chase was a business and financial news staffer with the Washington Post. Seth Shostak, an esteemed American astronomer and author, currently serving as the senior astronomer at the SETI Institute. SETI is the leading organization that searches our universe looking for extraterrestrial intelligent life. Seth hosts the popular weekly radio show and podcast, Big Picture Science, and has made numerous appearances in TV and internet film dramas. Welcome, panel. We are thrilled to have you all here.
We're happy to be here with you.
I'll second that.
Meagan Crawford, let's go to you first. What do you think will be the big space events that will make news in 2025 and why?
So I think it's really going to be all around launch. Yeah, everybody knows about SpaceX. Starship is finally going to really get a cadence this year. We're expecting 20 or more Starship launches, including a potential in-space refueling from one Starship to another, which would be the first time something like that has ever happened. We expect maybe up to 200 Falcon 9 launches from SpaceX. So the other exciting part about this is that there are 20 companies or entities around the world that think they're going to have a maiden launch of a new launch vehicle this year. So we're talking about hundreds of launches this year. And so then that begs the question, what's being launched? Why are there so many launch vehicles? Why is there so much demand for this service? And so that's really where I think people should start focusing is what is the reason that all of this launch exists?
Now, Meagan, you work with a lot of space startups. Any particular new space companies we should be watching in 2025?
So like any good mom, I'll tell you that I love all my children the same. But in 2025, we are expecting some big news out of a couple of our portfolio companies, including Voyager Space, who's building a commercial space station, Axiom Space, also building a commercial space station, Orbit Fab, refueling in space, SEN, the Space Entertainment Network. All of these companies are coming out with new offerings and new ways to engage with the public. We also expect the maiden voyage of Space Perspective, our company that's doing the high altitude balloon rides to the edge of space. And there's going to be a lot more news than that to come.
Scott Chase, do you agree with Meagan's list, or do you have any major 2025 events that we should add to the list?
Well, it's I think a mix of things. I absolutely agree with that list. And when I was invited to be on the show, I sat back and I took a look at my notes and thought, well, what am I thinking about 2025? And Brooke, I appreciate the decades of experience. You know, they kind of came to a halt a couple of years ago, but that doesn't mean I don't remain interested. And I wrote down some items just off the top of my head. And the very first one was launch vehicles. So to the point that we'll see so many new entries and so much activity, yes. And I think we'll see some developments or some advances in the art of reusable satellites, the video of the capture of Starship was absolutely fascinating. I watched it over and over again. On other fronts, as it relates to the satellite industry, which is where I come in, I think you'll see the consolidation and disappearance of some of the legacy players. And that doesn't mean that there's a reduction in capacity or drive. It means that there's just fewer names of companies out there serving this marketplace. I think you'll see also a function of more launch vehicles and more payloads. I think you'll see an emphasis on space debris and starting to deal with that problem in space because, Starlink's out there, Amazon's coming with thousands of satellites. All the demand that was referenced creates objects in the orbits that we use. I think maybe a militarization of space and the orbits might be an issue in 2025. Satellite to cell connectivity. And I wrote down regulatory developments in space, but with the recent change or the upcoming change in administration here and the collapse of democratic governments in Western Europe and general global unrest, not sure that's really going to be a big deal in 2025, or maybe it's a big deal going the wrong way. And I have some other thoughts, actually, that tie in with what Meagan already suggested, that increased investment in space infrastructure. So there's a lot to talk about.
Scott, can you be more specific regarding the satellite industry? What news events involving satellites, constellations, and their operators should we expect to see in 2025?
Well, it's hard to be specific, but I think, the acquisition of Intelsat by SES is part of that trend, and you'll see that continue to move forward. The deployment of Project Kuiper by Amazon not only going to drive demand for launch services, but it's going to create a competitive service. And so we kind of have, if you wanted to put a less specific and more comical slant on it, maybe the battle of the billionaires, the battle of the richest men in the world as it relates to access to space and utilization of the orbits that are useful to mankind. I think that, again, this isn't specific to a story that necessarily names names. You'll see a lot of emphasis on space sustainability. And that's a function not only of the kinds of companies that people want to work in, but in the preservation of this resource that's integral to our business. And I think perhaps this is an area where I get a little queasy, but because I'm an old guy, but machine learning and artificial intelligence, they're going to come into play, and some of the startups that Meagan is working with may well drive that process. So we'll see a lot of cross-pollination, a lot of collaboration as we move toward the development and provision of these services, whether they be at the one end, the high-altitude balloons and space tourism, or at the other end, down-to-earth broadband connectivity and satellite to cellular services.
Seth Shostak, you've heard Meagan and Scott's take on 2025. Are there any other space news events that you think will happen this year?
Well, of course, if you could predict what was going to happen, it wouldn't be terribly interesting, would it? The predictions are mostly interesting when they predict something unexpected. I'm just going to step back from, these comments on space industrial developments, because I know nothing about that. But one thing that is clear is that our ability to sense that there are other entities out there, that there actually are aliens, that they don't just populate movies and television shows, but actually populate the cosmos. I think that the evidence for that may indeed crop up sometime fairly soon, within the next couple of years. And I actually think that would be an inflection point in the history of Homo sapiens, because suddenly we would know we're not the only kids on the block.
Seth, in 2024, we heard a lot about issues caused by space debris. Has any of this debris had an impact on SETI's search for life?
Yeah, no, it hasn't actually. Space debris is a problem, but not for looking for ET, because the way we do that is, essentially just using big antennas. They're called radio telescopes, but that's maybe a little bit too pretentious. We just use these big antennas to try and eavesdrop on signals, and we haven't picked up any signals that are clearly due to extraterrestrials. But at some point, and I think that point might not be terribly far in the future, we will. And so I think that the history of Homo sapiens, when it's looked at, say, 100 or 1,000 years from now, will be divided into two sections: before the discovery of the aliens and afterward. And that could be a very exciting sort of thing.
So, Seth, you don't think 2025 will be the year you find life beyond Earth?
Well, no, I don't. But who knows? It could be. And of course, we're looking, if you're happy, Meagan, with just life, if life is good enough for you, like bacteria or something like that, we may find that fairly quickly, simply because we have space missions that go to places in our own solar system where that sort of life may have originated. Mars is the obvious example, but also some of the moons of the outer solar system, which do have liquids, including liquid water, and especially liquid water, where we might find some, bacterium again. And you might think, well, doggone it, how interesting is that after all? Because if I'm interested in bacteria, I can find them in my kitchen. I don't need to go into space to find that sort of thing. But if you did find it, it would be extremely important, because it would tell you right away that life's not just some sort of miracle that only happened here, but life is all over the place. So, I foresee that happening within the lifetime of the people on this panel, and I think that will be a very significant discovery.
We have time for a final word from each of you. Meagan, any final thoughts?
I would just say, keep your eyes to the sky. There are so many amazing things happening in this industry right now. So many launches planned, so many phenomenal space missions planned, deep space missions as well. As was just mentioned by Seth, these missions to the outer reaches of our solar system and to asteroids and to moons and to all of these different places. We're learning more and more every day. And it's going to be a very fun year when it comes to scientific discovery and business capabilities.
How about you, Scott? Anything you'd like to add?
When I wrote down 10 things that I thought I could comment on before I got the format, I did mention confirmation of extraterrestrial life at whatever level. So you kind of covered it with bacteria, but you went all the way up to sentient, intelligent beings. To Meagan's point, I think the coming year will be a banner year for startups and for innovative ideas across the board. I can hardly wait for some of these things to take place. And in 45 years in satellite, there's never been a time when there wasn't something to write about, talk about, or dream about. And that's why I look forward to the future with great anticipation.
And Seth, you get the last word.
Well, that never happens domestically, I have to say. But I do think that this is a special time in history, right? It's sort of like 1491, when you could have gone down to the shipyards in Spain and see that they were building wooden ships that could sail not just to other places in Europe, but that could sail across the Atlantic. Okay, so I think that that's where we are now. We're finally developing the technology, not just rockets, really, but also, telescopes and antennae and all that sort of thing, where we could find out our place in the cosmos. And I think everybody should be prepared for the possibility that we find that although you think you're special, thanks to what your parents told you when you were a kid, although you think you're special, we'll probably learn that we're not all that special.
Thank you to our panel for the great discussion. And thank you for joining us today for this special edition of Insights. Be sure to stay connected to the Space Intel Report throughout 2025 for the latest updates on the space industry. And check back here for the next episode of ENSCO Insights as we continue to probe the fascinating world of space exploration and technology. On behalf of everyone here at ENSCO Insights and the Space Intel Report, we wish you a very happy and healthy new year. I'm Brooke Brown. See you next time.